What's up, everybody? Welcome to Worship and Word Conversations, the place on Saturday afternoon where we kick back, relax. Let me pause, Chris, because I realize, I say that every single week. People been kicking back, relaxing like long before we started Worship and Word Conversations. So we here now, y'all.
we here. We here.
Yeah. We got new tools. We got new op, man. We got upgrades here in the studio, so it's good
Welcome
to
to
hang out
Wakanda.
with y'all. Yeah, it's a different world from where you come from. So yeah,
Woo, woo, woo.
ooh, yeah, we excited, man.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about what we have, for going forward, upgrading our software and our streaming capabilities is I don't have to press all the buttons, y'all. Like I don't have to press all of the buttons. They got updated feature in the software
Yeah.
that allows us to both control the flow of show and what's happening on
It's
screen and
so weird because I could easily be clicking them right now and I wasn't even thinking about it. Wow.
yeah,
I'm so preconditioned. So
precondition
preconditioned. What's
because
going on, y'all?
you're thinking, right?
Yeah.
It really calls for a shift in thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. No, it really does. Like I'm
Yep.
seeing the comments now and I
Yep.
can actually engage
Yep.
with them. Oh, man. Oh man, yeah, that's my reaction right there. Shout
Yep.
out to Leonore. I told Leonore she's officially an OG now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of OGs,
Yeah.
Carlos is a
Straight from
blessing.
the YouTube streets,
Be
Carlos
nice.
hanging out with us.
Yeah. It's good
And
to
then
see
we
Carlos.
got Aaron checking in, Leonore, Aaron, Donna, and Elaine hanging out with us, Cerise, Carmilla as well. So, man, woo! Listen, y'all, listen,
Yeah.
listen,
Mhm.
listen.
Mhm.
And so Chris and I were talking back before we clicked the go live button. And yesterday was interesting, man. It was really interesting
Yeah.
as executives, the two senior executives of this household were having a strategic alignment conversation that really bled into the time that we were supposed to be on live last night. And one of the things that Chris and I were shared before, like the fact remains that even those types of conversations, as intense as they were,
Yeah.
are different
Yep.
because we're at a different stage,
Yeah.
not just chronologically, but on so many different levels, emotionally, socially, financially, spiritually.
Yeah.
We're at a different place, so that even the strategic alignment conversations, y'all might call them arguments, but the strategic alignment conversations that we have, those even hit differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so what's going on, Miguel? Let's go. I don't even think I hit up Miguel at all this week, man. I gotta do better. Gotta do better. So last night, uh, to Carlos' point, I ain't gonna click on it. You gonna have to click on that.
I'm ready.
I ain't gonna,
'Cause I got to watch.
no, you gonna do it. So yeah. So last night we talked about God's shift in his thinking,
Mhm.
and what that looks like for those of us who believe in his prophetic character, his capacity, and what it means. Can one change their mind if they're omniscient?
Mm.
If you already know everything, then if you say you're going to do something and choose not to do it, did you technically change your mind? So this is how we started off, P. Like
Yeah.
we started off with this understanding of why would God say he's going to do something knowing that his people aren't going to want to enter anyway? So did he technically change his mind, or was he proving a point? Like what was he really doing, right?
Yeah.
And we came to the conclusion that at the end of all of this, the individuals who chose or who had a mind change issue were the Israelites themselves. So
Mhm.
because they chose not to change their mindset into going in, God was like, well, I will honor that. My mind is not going to change, being that like you as a people are going to go in. Just y'all ain't gonna go in. And so there's this idea of what does it look like when God decides to relent or to switch, because he tells Jonah, listen, Nineveh's time is up. 40 days. And I don't want us to get caught up on timelines here, because, you know, those of us that believe in particular timelines, end time, it's very meticulous. And I think that we're so meticulous with the timeline, and it's so fragile that we are hesitant for it not to work out, because I don't know, is it because of our ego, or maybe for us? Can't be for God if we know who God is. But God says, listen, 40 days and y'all are done. The people change, right? Mindset. The people change, and not just their mindset, heart change, right? Repentance, true repentance. And then God says, okay, I changed my mind. It wasn't a threat. And I think that we missed this piece where we try to look at God as this deistic creature or transcendent being that just says things to test us, versus actually being in the trenches with us and being emotional with us. We're emotional because he is. And I think we kind of missed that. So this dialogue that we saw in Numbers 14, what's going on, Nate? This dialogue that we saw in Numbers 14, it wasn't just him talking to Moses and Aaron just so that he can test Moses to see how much Moses would intercede on the behalf of those people. No, God was heated. He's like, yo, how long are they still gonna talk to me like this? Like, nah, we ain't. You know what? All right, this is gonna be the last time. And after he made that declaration, he came back to Moses and Aaron again and said, y'all gonna go through, but they like you can see the dialogue that he was having. But here's a crazy thing though, that this idea that for the Ninevites, God is saying, wow, okay, based on your action, I'm going to, and your heart, I'm going to undo what I said I was going to do. And that's difficult, right? Because his word is sure, he's God and he changes not. But I think we miss what that means, and his character not changing versus what he says he can do or undo changing. So then we go to the Israelites, because they decide to change their minds too when they realize that they're not going to enter into the promised land. Towards the end of Numbers 14, it's like, oh no, we messed up.
We ready.
We done met. They didn't change because of a heart situation. They changed out of fear. They were fearful to get in, and they were fearful to stay out. Either way, and we talked about last night the state of being, how your thoughts feed your brain and your feelings feed your body, or the thoughts are the language of the brain, feelings is the language of the body, but it creates a state of being because one feeds into the other, which feeds into the other, which creates the state of being. Their state of being was fear. And we said if you stay in fear long enough, state of being of fear turns into doubt, rebellion. Like, so it's crazy, right? So it's like, how do we do this? Pete, how do we get to a place where, you know, we can know what God is thinking so that we never have to be on the side where he changes his mind? You don't.
Right. Because that's not the point.
That's not the point. It's not the point, y'all. So even though they changed, they didn't really change. So God was like, nah, y'all can go in if you want, but I'm not there. And y'all gonna go without my actual presence? Oh, I'll definitely not gonna make it. So this shift in thinking, as we're talking about today, P, is I think is so crucial, because a lot of times in scripture and even in our own lives, when we see certain things happen or not happen, it's not because God just flippantly decided on a whimsical, on a whim to just say, I think I'm going to give you a hardship, give you a hard season. Not many times, not grain of salt, y'all. I'm not saying that this is everybody's situation, but many times it's because we are stuck in a particular pattern, mindset, behavioral pattern. And so what God has to do is he has to wedge something in there. Usually he changes a trajectory, something that happens for us to be like, oh, okay. And it's another opportunity yet again to shift thinking. And then we ended with this, understanding, P, that the way that you break that, create the awareness of thinking about what you're thinking about, metacognition, is prayer.
Man, let me tell you about an experience I had today, right? So there's my tires, there's been some thing with the sensor in my tires and the air and all of that. And it's been like that for a while, right? It's one of those pricey, we want to be super smart with how we do the tires and how it's got to register on the screen. And so I'm outside, I'm like, okay, the tire's flat. Go to the gas station, pull up at the gas station, the free air joint. It's crazy. Gas station down the street had the free air joint. The one closer was like, oh, y'all can't be the only ones. They got the free air joint now too, right? So I pull up to the free air joint, and a lady gets out. She's trying to put air in her tire, And I pull up behind her and she looks at me and she has that look of like irritation, frustration. What are you looking at me for? Right. So I'm in the car, like, what you looking at me for? Like, what? Right? What? Right?
Yeah.
Christian thinking, right? After about 3 or 4 minutes, the same lady who was like irritated, frustrated, looking at me like I got a problem.
Yeah.
The lady kind of mouths, "Hey, can you help me?"
What? I wasn't ready.
As soon as she said, "Hey, can you help me?"
Yeah.
Everything that I had framed about her up to that moment disappeared. In that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm outside. She's like, I don't know what's going on. I can't work the air pump. And I'm like, okay, here's the deal. We got a couple of options here. And from the way your tire looks, I'm pretty sure you got a nail or something because air is just not going in. Right across the street is a car service center. I was like, hey, drive across the street. They got the super legit air compressor. They'll be able to let you know, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, thank you so much. I didn't even notice this place across the street. And the lady's like, hands me $5. And I'm like, lady, come on. I don't
use that to patch your tire, man. That's all it takes.
I don't need no money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Bruh. So this is just hitting me right now. This is just hitting me right now as I'm telling this to you. She's like, no, just take it. And I have on a sweatshirt. And she literally reaches in my sweatshirt and puts the money in there. And just gets in the car. Here's the thing, bro. I noticed just in reflection.
Yeah.
The $5 was in her hand the entire time.
Okay.
The whole time. She had been
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
She had the $5 in her hand.
Holding it. Yeah.
She's prepping that, okay, this is a frustration. Maybe somebody will come along. My perception pulling up, why is this lady giving me the side eye?
Right.
Is she giving me the side eye because there's some complexion disparity between the two of us? Is there an age disparity? Why?
Yeah.
And the moment she said, hey, can you help me? I had two choices within the span of 1 to 2 seconds.
Yeah, you did.
Do I ignore what I originally framed out because of how I painted her story?
Yeah.
Or do I put myself in a position to help her?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that first 3 or 4 seconds getting out the car was so hard.
Oh, I came across an article, man. Neuroscience. It talks about the shift or the time it takes to literally change your mind. So last time we talked about like evolving, but not changing your mind. Where, man, there's a great example. I think it was like dealing with like pressing your gas, the pedal for increasing or accelerating, and there's a slight shift in how much you think about whether or not you should let up or not. Man, I'm butchering it. If I find it, I'll put it in there. But there has been like record like metrics of just understanding what that time frame is when it may even be too late because you already have applied pressure. You've already made the decision. So for your mind to like neurologically go from here to the behavior, it may be too late. So the fact that you said you only had like a second or two, that's legit. That is legitimate, bro. So
let me ask this, man, before we dive into what you want to kind of lead us in discussion. How many of us can, in the comments, hop in and share this with us, family, or even if you're watching the replay. Think about the last time you've been in one of those moments where either you felt like, for whatever reason, you felt like the Holy Spirit was nudging you, or whatever construct that you were in, right? Man, I should help this person, or I should say hi, or I should not respond in this way. And you have those, you're literally thinking about what you're about to think about. And it seems like it's happening so slowly but it's really happening fast. And then sometimes the moment passes, like, oh, I'm about to round this corner, and I know a person stands on this corner with this sign. I got money in my glove box, or my whatever the thing is called, a little cup holder.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone.
And has that happened to anybody else recently where you've kind of been in that space and either you circumvented your muscle memory or natural reaction in that moment and did the opposite, or maybe you just were in such indecision and kind of the window closed and then you felt bad about it as you were driving away or going down the different aisle or turning your back, or, you know, am I the only one? So be interesting to see as Chris frames out some stuff for us, what everyone else shares in the comments.
What reframing?
We're going to the deeper practical application of, you know, yesterday we were talking about, or you were talking about with the children of Israel, how that framework, how do we get to rebellion because of the lack of changing our minds?
Right.
It's really easy for me to think about Israel and be like, yeah, they should have just went in.
Yeah, like why not? Why not? But they had the mindset already. They brought up Egypt like 3 times.
The leeks, the onions, the flesh pots. Like we had it great in bondage.
That's crazy. So I think that would be the first piece, right? Like what is when we're talking about a shift, you can't, so just from, okay, let's just go with this. So I believe that force, according to science, still equals mass times acceleration. And inertia in the law of physics is the state of when it's like the greatest state of friction, or like when an object is like, I'm assuming, is it fully at rest, or before it changes in another direction, it takes the most amount of force to get something out of inertia, right? And so we're just going to go with this right now, P, because I think that this might be what might be helpful. We're talking about a shift, is that if you think of your mind as something that's absorbing information, absorbing thoughts, processing feelings, and it's in this state of inertia, so to speak, right? Because technically, if an object is moving at a particular speed constantly, it technically isn't moving at all. I mean, from a scientific perspective, it's as if it's not moving. And so in order for it to change, it would take another force, or, you know, mass, something in order to change its trajectory, which means that it technically is in a state of inertia. So this is what's happening with our minds, right? With our minds, and I'm going to pull this up. I think I might have referred to this last night. In our minds, when we get into a routine, it's easy for us, in a sense, to now have a state of inertia where everything that we're doing is almost subconscious. The routine of waking up, going to the gym, making breakfast. Like I make the same breakfast almost, if not almost the same breakfast every single day. Probably doing my eyes closed now, right? And with that being said, there are times when something shifts or something interrupts the flow of, or the rest state, or the constant state of movement that causes you to change your trajectory. So I guess what we can probably do is kind of look at what that looks like first. So I'm going to read something. This is not going to be this is one of the articles or one of the books, but it's from the same guy, Joe Dispenza, and then we're going to connect it to the one that we looked at earlier, which is, he talks about this idea of, let me see if I can find it here. Conscious thoughts. So he says conscious thoughts repeated often enough become unconscious thinking. Say it again. I'm gonna say it again. Think about the lights. Think about your own life, right, y'all? Conscious thoughts often, when they're repeated often enough, become unconscious thinking. In a common example of this, we must consciously think about every action while we're learning to drive. I think I might have mentioned this last night, y'all. After much practice, we can drive 100 miles from point A to point B and not remember any part of the trip, because our subconscious mind is typically at the wheel. We've all experienced being in an unaware state during a routine drive only to feel our conscious mind re-engaging in response to an unusual engine sound or a rhythmic thump of a flat tire. I know y'all, I had my car woes, a couple weeks ago, right? Like, unconscious, I was definitely all right. And this is something to be said for those of us who don't even have like the unconscious thinking, because we're always thinking that the other shoe is going to drop. That's a whole other situation, y'all.
You coming for me? It's only 20 minutes in. You coming for me?
Coming for myself, man. so
are you?
so look at this. This is the caveat. This might be the first practical step. He says, so if we entertain continually the same thoughts, they'll start off as conscious ones, but they'll ultimately become unconscious automatic thought programs.
Okay. All right. Listen, this is the reason why Paul says whatsoever is. Whatsoever is.
Yeah.
Pure, lovely, of good report.
Yeah.
Continue to think about those things.
Yeah.
Because if you do, it will become you'll get to the place where you won't have to consciously think about those things.
Right.
Because they'll be just in your subconscious. So Leonore says, this is different for me. I'm contrary. So I generally default to opposite. You tell me to do something, I'm gonna do the opposite. I've had to literally train myself into obedience. And so far, I've only been semi-successful in my relationship with God. And I think so many of us can resonate with that, Leonore, because of what Chris has outlined for us from the article. There's times where we get into the thought process of, man, I'm no good. Like, I'm no good for God. Yeah. Like, man, it's too much. Man, this journey is too hard. Man, doing the right thing is too complicated. Man, I'll never figure it out. Man, I'll never. So you continue to repeat that over and over and over again. Your default becomes, well, you don't even have to verbalize. In your soul, you just know you're no good. And many times, and I know the author doesn't bring this up, but I'm just going to insert this in here before Chris comes back. Many times what we experience as disruptions are avenues that God uses to shift you from your subconscious default.
Yeah. The avenues
of grace. Not thinking about it.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Like you're not. And this is where immutable grace, because he's like, you ain't even on that. So I'm going to show up and interrupt. I'm going to break the inertia. I'm going to break this unconscious or this stream of movement and shift your trajectory, which means that I'm going to have to apply either an object, mass, or acceleration or force. Yo, listen. Yeah, we going scientific.
Come on, high school.
We going scientific.
And I didn't do that well in physics, so I'm learning today.
Listen, I don't think I did either, but that's all right. We out here. So this is the first thing that I would say that we need to really kind of look at them is understanding. Okay, what am I unconsciously thinking about? And that's a question that's almost contradictory. Well, how can I really think about what I unconsciously think about?
Metacognition.
You now need to start mapping out, well, what do you do? Most of your thoughts are turned into behaviors.
Yeah.
And if you can map your behaviors, it's likely that as you're mapping these guys, the reason why we talk about journaling and talk about how you're feeling, most of these behaviors are tied to a particular emotion. And so as you're building out or starting to analyze and to assess, what am I doing every day? You can then start to have the metacognition piece where you're now starting to think about what you're thinking and feeling while you're doing these things. So it says this was her Wednesday of this week. So the first piece is to create a sense of awareness. You have to become aware. And here's the crazy thing. From a scientific standpoint, you have some capacity to break out of this unconscious thinking, to kind of look at yourself. Look at Psalm 42, I believe it is, or David is. But then there's the other side that you don't have control over, and P just mentioned it. God is going to show up and create a disruption
Yep. Yep.
a force,
Yep.
an object, or some change in speed for you to say, oh, hold up, what's going on? For you to snap out of it. And that is the opportunity. And it's going to come back to you, though, to choose. Once you have this awareness, you then now have to choose to engage in what's happening.
And that's why we have to be careful to put everything in the category of the devil is busy.
Because he just put you on autopilot. As a matter of fact, he ain't even put you on autopilot. You put yourself on autopilot. And he's sitting there in a co-pilot seat, riding along with you, like, yeah, we good. It's God that shows up, jukes the right? and then now the enemy is like, oh, hold on, how do I get him back on the same trajectory?
How do I get him back on autopilot?
Yeah. Autopilot. Wow. Okay.
So, and I know, Chris, for many of us, or maybe it's just for me.
Yeah.
This idea of being more mindful, the idea of, tracking our thoughts. Cerise was talking about an experience that she had and kind of hesitated because of thought. It's a lot of work, and I don't know, Chris, if you have this similar experience, or Worshiping Word family, if you have this similar experience, as long as it's in my head, it doesn't sound that off. But the minute I begin like writing it down or verbalizing it or framing it in a conversation with somebody else, I'm like, oh man, that is a whack thought.
For those who want to be financially free, your first step to financial freedom is writing out how much money you actually got and seeing it in a budget.
It hits different.
It does. Right. It's the same thing. For those who want to be mentally healed.
Yep.
Got to go to somebody.
Yep.
And hear them saying to you back what you
just
said. Like, man, I'm jacked up.
Wow.
We're getting somewhere. Now, how does that make you feel? And that is the first thing, right? That is how you can take that stuff and put it and for you to actually see it.
Yeah.
Start to kind of materialize some of what's already in your head and write it out. And even just talking from last night, just saying the prayer mode, that should be my first. It should be my knee-jerk reaction. Sometimes it's not. Right? Sometimes it's not the man, this is not going. All right, God, let's just talk about this thing.
Yeah.
It's if not talking to myself, talking to somebody else about it. Really? You ain't gonna talk to God first?
Or subtweeting.
For the micro expressions and the likes to feel that other people understand.
Yes.
They have no idea. I have no idea what on earth you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. For those of us who are contrarians, it's tough, right? But that is the line of thinking, right? Where you eventually, and there's a balance, right? Because you can go from being a contrarian to someone who is just overtly submissive and a people pleaser.
Oh yeah.
So there's this balance that we have to kind of, play. Yeah. Sarisa, her knee-jerk reaction is wanting to throw hands or axes. Because you be throwing axes too. Yeah. So yeah. So let's take a look at another one here, because I think that what this might help us to do is to kind of see this. So it's going to be a little bit of the reiteration of what we mentioned last night. Then also with the new material P that we looked at. So just to recap, Dispenza says it takes awareness and effort to break the cycle of a thinking process that has become unconscious. Awareness and effort. It's one thing to be aware. Yeah. It's one thing to know. It's another thing to actually do something about it. So he says, all right, so how do you break the cycle? First, we need to step out of our routine so we can look at our lives. But let's back up. That means that you have to have a routine first. Or at least start to map out what you've been doing so that you can see the patterns and call it your routine. Some of us don't like the word routine. Some of us don't want to be put in a box or labeled as, we all have routines. Not having a routine is also a routine. I guarantee you that if you just look over maybe the last 5 days or maybe the 5 weeks, you'll start to see particular patterns. That is routine. So before you can even step out of it, you got to call it out and be honest with it.
I was having a conversation with one of my coaches last year, and we were talking about just some part of business or work.
Yeah.
And she was like, "So, tell me what you do. X happens. What do you do?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "What do you do? Like, what's your routine? What are your steps? What do you go to?" And I was like, "I don't have one." She's like, "Oh." And that's a routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
She said, track what your behaviors are.
Yeah.
Whenever this thing happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then ask yourself, why are you getting the outcomes that you're getting? Because I was like, I've been doing all of this, and nothing's changing. And she's like, all right, cool. Let's write it down. Let's track it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, track what? I am telling you. You don't just take me at my word. I'm telling you
what I'm doing.
Working. She's like, no, I don't take you at your word.
Yeah.
I need to see.
Yeah.
And once I started looking at my non-routine routine, then it was like, okay, I see where the gaps are.
Right.
But that's the hardest part. It's so easy for me to put the blame on external, and external has a huge part to play. But to minimize what are the things that I'm contributing, that's impacting how things are going.
That's one of the shifts that I made at work. Is it's so difficult for me to track. We have a tracker, like we have to track all of the billable hours and the things.
I'm tracking.
Oh gosh, it kills me, y'all. But this connects back to, and let me pull some of the stuff that I did from the retreat, y'all. Let me just go back a little bit to pull some of that stuff. So one of the things that we did was we looked at, so y'all remember where, I mentioned to you, I have, the goal planner that I got, and you list out the goals, and then you have the motivations for each goal, and then you start breaking down each of those goals, which are like annual to quarterly, then quarterly to weekly to daily, and you got your big three. What are you going to do for the week? This retreat kind of reversed all of that. It's like, don't start off with just having a list of goals. Start off with your why first. My why to what? Like my why to a goal, right? Like, no. Like, what is your personal why? What is your professional why? And what is your team in the work that you're doing, the team why? Like, what are those three? Start there. I was like, it became an existential exercise, because now I'm thinking, what am I doing with my life? It had nothing to do with the goals that I had. Now each of those goals, it begged the question, do those fit in the overarching larger goals, not goals, but purpose for what I see myself becoming, doing, who I'm helping? And so my team goal, as I realized, was, you know what? I had to be aware of who I was as a creative. And one of the things, and everybody's creative process is different, but for those of us that got the whole perfectionistic, we play our cards close to our chest until we think it's dang near perfect, and then we release it to the world, in this case our team, and say it's ready. As a matter of fact, you don't even need to edit it. I've edited it myself. I've gone through the painstaking, here thou goest, because I would not want you to have to put in work that I think is relying upon me to do. You should just be able to take it and implement it the way that you need to. God, those of us that have this mindset take on much more than we think we need to. And so it's more difficult for us to be true. I say this with very true team players.
Yeah.
Because you think that a lot of it is on you, when all you need to do is release the first draft first, get it chopped up, and then you can continue to iterate. Anyway, so pulling back.
We don't want that chop up.
Yeah. We don't want that, right? Because there's a deeper reason. Is it because of competency issues? Is it so now this is where, for me, I said, what I want to do is I want to be able to open up my creative process, because a lot of what I tend to do is closed, behind it, closed doors, like, do what I need to do, and then say, okay, here, we're ready. And nothing is wrong with that, because, the stuff is coming out. But here's the point. I wanted to be more collaborative with my team. So what that requires me to do is have more transparency. So now I said, what I want to do is I want to have, let me actually just read this, y'all, 'cause you know what? Yeah. Actually, that's not even a new one, P. I actually had a different version that I actually wrote down, and it's not even on here. It's on my computer. But the picture, the essence is to be more collaborative with my team, so that my work can also be more efficient. And what that would require me to do now as a goal is to have at least 2 to 3 touch points where my team can come in and look at where I'm at and how they could possibly help. So to control this thing, P, I know this is a little long, but just bear with me. To control this thing, what I'm saying is, why not just do what I do as a UX designer anyway? Begin with the wireframe stage and then release it. Then start with when you're actually putting in the concepts and then release it. Get the feedback. So when I say touch points, guys, I mean like 2 to 3 touch feedback loops. Right, where people actually have to come in and say, why don't you do? Now, for a lot of us, that's hard because it's like, I want to have it as in a solid place first before I start taking in all these other advice. And then, and then it just kind of gets clouded. So my goal was, now here's the goal. The macro goal is have a specific strategic feedback loop so that I still have control over my creative process, but I'm still open and transparent to areas where I'm ready for the team. The team should no longer be able to say, where are you with this? And even though I know I'm almost done and they're like, I'm not sure where you at. And even though it's going to be on time, I don't want that to be an issue. So that being said, I then said, let me go a step further, y'all. And let me, instead of using the app that we use to track our stuff, put it in the team calendar publicly. What am I working on right now? And then block out times where they cannot pull me into a meeting. So now, instead of having in a private tracker, and I even told this, I shared this with the team. I was like, hey, listen, I'm just testing it out. Don't know if it's going to be effective or not, but it definitely is more accountable. Not that anybody's looking at your calendar, but I'm going to now put, what did you do today? And y'all know in Google Calendar, I don't know if y'all know this, but there's a focus time option and an event, so now you can also see the percentage of how much time you spend in meetings versus time you're actually spending doing work. Anyway, all of that to say, y'all, very practical for what I had to do in order to start shifting.
So let me ask you, and you can respond after we take a couple of these.
Absolutely.
But what was the tension that you had to manage to position yourself away from mad scientist in a lab by yourself to even consider being open to feedback, perspective, or even just the heightened awareness of your team? Hold on to that.
Okay.
As we take a couple of these. Cerise says, my thoughts have been consumed with loathing my current job. I need to give those thoughts over to God. All right. My other thoughts, scholarships. Oh, listen.
Yeah, that's right.
Woo. And when you're in those spaces, consider even the rehearsal, the thoughts you rehearse in the car. On the way to the job, before you get out of the car and walk into the building, or even before you hop on the Zoom call, how the thoughts you rehearse in many cases seem to dictate what happens afterwards. Right. Leonore says, my thoughts have been focused on the transference of faith skills. I'm seeing the results of my faith in one area, but found myself in a desert in another area. Realize it came down to believing God in this area as I do in others. And Delia says, my business model for the past 15 years has been very effective to me because as far as I'm concerned, it has been working. And it has. She's been killing it. She's been crushing it. Then disruption. Then my daughter said, you need to do this. And I gave a definitive no.
It's like, nah, we good. We good.
But thinking more and more, she is right. A small shift can make it even better and add creativity and possibly lower my stress. And then this rhetorical. Why is the shift so hard for some of us?
Can you blame the Israelites talking about Egypt when they've lived there for 400 years? I mean,
You can make a case, right?
you can make a case. Like God, I mean, don't you? I mean, God, this been almost half a millennium. You don't want to? Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, as we want to talk about why it's so hard for us to make a shift.
Yeah.
When the body responds to a thought by having a feeling, this initiates a response in the brain. The brain, which constantly monitors and evaluates the status of the body, notices that the body is feeling a certain way. In response to that bodily feeling, the brain generates thoughts that produce corresponding chemical messengers. You begin to think the way you are feeling. I'm gonna say this again. Y'all.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
say
yeah.
this again. Like I'm gonna start over because
Yeah.
I want y'all to see the progression, the scientific progression. When the body responds to a thought having a feeling, when the body responds to a thought by having a feeling, meaning you think something and then your body reacts. And I think we talked about the fact that thoughts, language of the brain, feelings is language of the body, right? And so if in this case right now, if it's the mind that reacts and then the body responds with a feeling, it initiates the response back to the brain. Thought, feeling, thought. But in this case, it's a response. Not a thought yet, but it's a thought, feeling, response. The brain now, which is always monitoring and evaluates the status of the body. So right now we're separating body from mind from body, all right? Brain from body in this instance. And that's actually in science what they've done. The body is separate from the actual brain. Of course, it's interconnected, but two separate entities. The brain, which constantly monitors, y'all, it notices that the body is feeling a certain way. And in response to that bodily feeling, the brain generates thoughts that produce corresponding chemical messengers. I affirm. It's now affirming what the body is feeling by creating the thoughts. Because if not, they don't say it here, but I'm going to say it. Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You don't run around looking crazy talking about anyway. So the mind and the body are now trying to reconcile so that now that you're feeling this, I'm going to produce, the mind saying this, the brain saying, I'm going to produce chemicals to align with what you're actually feeling. Okay. You begin to think the way you were feeling.
Yo, man, we got to bring the nurse comments, man.
Okay.
Yes,
Take this
nurse. Take this nurse comment.
Oh, Cerise says, this is why surgeons won't operate on someone who thinks they will die. Oh, hey, some of the people who got COVID is because they already believe they have it before they had it, y'all. let's just put that out there right now. I'm just go ahead and put that out there right now. Like, yeah, the mind. Yeah. Yep.
In reading and listening to the forward, I was listening to the forward of this particular book, and I don't know if the article that you're reading, the author's book. I was listening to the forward earlier today, and in the forward they were just talking about, and even Caroline Leaf talks about it in her book, Switch on Your Brain, the stories of people who have come back from debilitating diseases, seemingly minimalized brain function, all of these different things, because of their efforts to shift their thinking. Like the things that we label as, medical marvels, right? And I think as persons of faith, we minimize the miracle of faith, of believing, that produces a physiological transformation in some cases. I mean, that's what you're reading in the article. Like what happens in your body,
right,
as a result of what you're thinking.
And so let me clarify this. This is actually another one of the books.
Okay.
But from the same guy.
Is that his previous book?
Evolve Your Brain. The science of changing. Science of changing your mind. I think what someone did was just did a summary of that. So I just pulled like the book summary, y'all. That's really all I did. Just pull the book summary and just kind of understand, like, in its totality, what is he saying here? Here's what happens though. You begin to think the way you are feeling. Yo, Pete, you hit this on the money. Thinking creates a feeling, and then feeling creates thinking in a continuous cycle. This
Feedback
loop eventually creates a particular state in the body that determines the general nature of how we feel and behave.
Ooh.
We call this a state of being.
Oh, good. One more time. One more time.
Thinking creates a feeling, and then a feeling creates thinking, which is in this continuous cycle. And so this loop eventually creates a particular state in the body that determines the general nature of how we feel and how we behave. This is called a state of being. Your
So what?
state.
So what if the miracles, right?
Mhm.
I'm going back to Numbers
Mhm.
or even Exodus. What if the miracles?
Yes, they were. Go ahead and say it.
What if they serve the function of disrupting
Yes.
the thought pattern?
Yes.
Because in the current thought pattern, and even out of Exodus, even when we get to Numbers and we see
Yeah.
these wilderness miracles,
Yep.
the thought pattern is, okay, I think this is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel terrible.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the only thing that I can say to remedy being terrible is going back to Egypt.
Right.
So anytime something happens successively, we ain't got no water, we ain't got no food.
Yeah.
I told you it was going to be terrible.
Yeah.
I told you we should have just went back to Egypt. I'm
Yeah.
in this feedback loop. I'm in this
Yep.
echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
What if part of the miracle experiences is for God to be like, I need you to think differently about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not necessarily getting stuck on the miracle per se, but being open to, wait, what if there's another way
Mhm.
to think about
Mhm.
this situation?
Which is why he gave him the 40-day journey instead of the 6-day journey. They weren't ready for the mind shift. So let me take them the 6 weeks journey to the promised land versus the 6-day journey.
Hold on. So you mean to suggest to me and the rest of the Worship and Word family that there are things that I've been working on, that I have been strategizing around, that I have been framing up, but I'm not ready for?
You ain't ready.
Because if I walked into them, my thought pattern, my way of thinking would not be able to sustain what God is about to walk me into. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
that. Did Jesus not say your spirit is willing? Listen, y'all. Listen, y'all. like this is not, it's not that you aren't willing to do it. He's like, but man, we talk about flesh as if we were just talking about, but nah, y'all, it's the feedback loop of body and mind. Your flesh, your body and mind state of being is weak. It's deviant from what I really want you to do. And I think if you start thinking about things like that in scripture, when it talks about, flesh, where we understand it's not just what's governing how you move, how you react, how you're doing things with your body that is disobedient or not in not righteous or is good or is wholesome. What is that?
So Donna says, don't reinforce negativity. Then there's a reason when you look, and Cerise, if you can chime in on this, when they talk about the majority, the number of ailments, diseases, whatever, that are directly connected to stress.
Wow.
Where does stress principally show up? In the way we think.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Like, God has been on this for a while, y'all. This ain't just.
I am going to tangibly, demonstrably show to you what your failure to shift in thinking does around you. So if you want to live a life that is disease-ridden and unprotected, I will create the disruption by removing protection around you, O Israel. I will have armies come in because you already got armies coming in anyway, but you don't see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this by giving you curses. Listen, curses is still, in a sense, grace from God.
Yeah.
Because whether you are whether you're doing right or whether you are doing wrong, I will show you things to bring you out of yourself to understand where you are. Oh my God, this is great. Why is all of this happening? Remember my word? Remember what I told you? If you did align, if you did obey, you in the right. And now you know why.
Yeah.
Curses. Why is God doing this? You remember what I said? Remember what I said? But if you didn't do it, I get the belt. You remember? And so I feel like there is this sense where God does both positive and it's not the reinforcement as if he's already reinforcing. This is crazy. Yes. Oh man, somebody mentioned it, but he's reinforcing what you've already had here, but not in a way that's going to keep you in that state.
Yeah. It's
in a way to help you to say, God, wow, okay, I get it. I get it. I'm ready to leave this. I don't like it. You know, so
there was a thing that we were talking about a couple of months ago, and I just want to bring it back into this conversation. What if in some of the miracle stories, what if in some of them, what if in some of the miracle stories the miracle wasn't the healing itself? What if the miracle was creating the scenario that led to a change in thought that produced the intended outcome? For example, right? For example, I know we kind of been pulling at this particular miracle for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
When Jesus tells the lame man to get up.
Okay. I was going to hit Lazarus, John 11:46.
When he's like, get up.
42. Yeah. Yeah.
Because my question is, could the miracle take place if without him believing that the miracle could take place? Because Jesus doesn't stand him up.
Chicken before the egg, right?
Jesus doesn't stand him up.
Doesn't.
Jesus doesn't touch him and stand him up. Jesus like, yo, get up, fam.
Yeah.
Grab your joint. Let's roll out.
You know, the best description of this is in chapter 6, Steps to Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna go to it, but when you get a chance, faith and acceptance, y'all.
Yeah.
The reason why I brought up Lazarus is because after the miracle, it says, and then people believed. Change in thought.
Yeah.
Shift. Lazarus was already dead.
He's dead.
Lazarus already believed, which is why he was even able to even hear God's voice when he was arrested. He knew the voice of God even in his rest, bro. Well, the dead knows nothing, so y'all don't listen to me. Yeah. But all of that to say, it was the people that experienced this that said, "Oh,
that's the miracle."
Yo, P, when you talked about Elisha,
and
he was like, "All right, I'm gonna take the same
thing,
same cloak." Wow. See, he did that. Other people were watching. They're like, "Oh, he got the double portion." Ooh, God is with. Ooh, yep. That's shift in thinking.
And I think within that frame, right, one of my challenges is minimizing the impact of my change in thinking. Because based on the articles that you've been reading and some of the neuroscience that we've been talking about for the past several months, aligned with the biblical examples, the shift in thinking resonates so far beyond just me and my particular scenario, me and my issue, me and my child. The reverberations of that shift in thinking are so far and wide. So this is why God says to the children of Israel, I can't let y'all go thinking the way that y'all thinking.
Yeah.
Because the reverberations of how you think are literally going to be felt around the world.
Okay. P, we gonna do it. We gonna do it. Steps to Christ, chapter 6. We gonna do it. I'm gonna just read this one piece for you. It's real short too. We gonna do it. Okay. From the simple Bible account of how Jesus healed the sick, we may learn something new or something about how to believe in him for the forgiveness of sins. This is where most of us fail, by the way, because we don't believe that we're forgiven.
Yeah. Oh.
Feedback loop. So we live as if we're not because we don't believe that we have been. She
and
says,
I treat people around me as a reflection of not believing that I've been forgiven.
Right. Let us turn to the story of the paralytic at Bethesda. The poor sufferer was helpless. He had not used his limbs for 38 years, yet Jesus bade him, rise, take up your bed and walk. The sick man might have said, Lord, if you will make me whole, I will obey your word. But no, he believed Christ's word, believed that he was made whole, and he made the effort at once. And she puts this in emphasis here, italics, he willed to walk, and he did walk. He acted on the word of Christ, and God gave the power. He was made whole. I'm going to pause here and say the way that you transition your shift in thinking when it comes to faith is with willing yourself to do something that only God can do for you. The only way to shift in the realm of faith is to will yourself to do something that only God can do for you, because as you will it, he wills it on your behalf, and then it happens. Nothing to do with thoughts, nothing to do with feelings, but the effort. All right.
Oh, my goodness.
P, hold it, P. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse.
Let me write it down.
In like manner, you are a sinner. You cannot atone for your past sins. You cannot change your heart and make yourself holy. But God promises to do all this for you through Christ. You, change of mind, believe, emphasis, that promise. You confess your sins and give yourself to God. You, emphasis, will to serve him. Just as surely as you do this, God will fulfill his word to you. If you believe the promise, believe that you are forgiven and cleansed, God supplies the fact you are made whole. Just as Christ gave the paralytic power to walk when the man believed that he was healed. It is so if you believe it. Last one. I'm going to just stop it right here because there's more. Do not wait to feel.
Come on. Yeah.
Do not wait. She puts some emphasis. Do not wait to feel that you are made whole, but say, I believe it. It is so, not because I feel it, but because God has promised. Y'all. You know, is it appropriate then to conclude that we succeed or fail because we think we can, and those same thoughts affect our area of influence?
Steps to Christ, Gloria, Steps to Christ, chapter 6.
Chapter 6, yep. Faith and acceptance.
Man, the fact that even me willing, because you read that from Steps to Christ, chapter 6, and it's like, oh man, how can I will?
Right.
It is God who works in you, who will
to do. And that's the scary part, because you don't know what's going to happen when you decide to. Yeah, exactly. Because that's all it is. You don't even know. You don't know. That's faith, y'all. That's faith. That's faith. Like, there's no other way to explain it. There's no other way to describe it. There's no science in between when you will and when he wills.
Yeah, it's
that something happens. It's a mystery.
The fact, it's like we talk about cheat codes, right?
Yeah.
We talk about cheat codes. We talk about formulas. We talk about all these things, frameworks.
Yep.
The fact is, and I used to, preachers used to say things, and sometimes, preachers be making up stuff because it sounds good.
Yeah. As
a kid, man, I used to hear this, man. It's easier to be saved than to be lost. I'm like, I'm 12, 13 years old. Like, y'all making it feel real complicated. But it's like, and I think it calls for, under the thing that we framed out, a shift in thinking, a shift in my thinking about God. Yeah. Going back to what you said earlier, if I think God, for a lot of us, God has been framed to be this guy upstairs who is literally waiting to say, gotcha. Oh, I gotcha. And I wrote it down and I'm coming for you.
That's the problem.
So if that's my thinking, God is just waiting to get me, to capture me, to mess me up, then that's going to like infuse
Mhm.
just how I live my life. Everything. I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. I'm waiting for a mess up.
Yep.
Because this is God, catching me for something stupid that I've done or paying me back or whatever. But if my frame is, and even when we're talking about prophecy,
Mhm.
when it comes to prophecy, what do I think God's actual end game is?
Right. Right.
Do I think that God is only setting things up for a destruction, like destruction of sin and sinners, and this is God's end game, destruction of sin and sinners? Well, then that puts God in a weird place.
It sure does. It sure does.
But if God's end game toward me, forget everybody else, towards me, is Jeremiah, my good expected, like God wants the best for me.
Yeah.
And even if I don't choose God's best for me, he is willing to accept my choice, even though he has framed every provision. Everything is set up.
Yeah.
Like, so even if I consider, what about God? He's like, all right, cool. That's enough. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's act on Pierre's behalf.
Yeah.
Like but if my thinking about God is like, man, he's just trying to just mess me up. It's gonna, and that's where some of us, it's so hard to even consider that we've been forgiven and go down the process of shifting our thoughts that will create a different bodily reaction. Because we think God is just, man, God is like that terrible teacher in third grade that always puts you on punishment. And he's just waiting for you to mess up.
Y'all, man, wow, Pete. Y'all go read the chapter. This is for long-standing believers who've already gone through the repentance phase.
Yeah.
This ain't for those who's like, no, this is for those who's like, I've turned around, I'm giving my life to Christ. And she says, and now you find yourself being worse.
Oh, listen.
She's like, you've shifted your mind. Repentance is to turn. You've shifted your mind, and yet there's still some stuff that you still haven't fully let go of. What have you let go of? You shifted your mind, but you don't believe that he honors and accepts your shift.
That's what Jesus says to Peter when you converted.
When you shift.
He been with Jesus 3.5 years. And Jesus like, when your thinking actually changes.
We get there. Well, we can have that. we can have a chat. Y'all. There's it's a lot. It's a lot to chew on. I'll put this one in here. So I'll insert this to begin changing your attitude. Individuals must begin to pay constant attention to your thoughts. In particular, and I think this was a particular study. So in particular, what they did was they made a conscious effort to observe their automatic thought processes, especially the harmful ones. And then to their surprise, they found that most of their persistent negative inner statements were not true. Woo! In other words, just because we have a thought does not necessarily mean that we have to believe that it's true. As a matter of fact, he's not done. This dude is. As a matter of fact, most thoughts are ideas that we make up and then come to believe. And believing merely becomes a habit. If that was only belief.
Delia says, I needed a shift in thinking to remain focused on God in church. Without the shift, I couldn't grow. Church is messed up and my thinking on these issues was not good. I had to shift to survive spiritually.
Absolutely. For those of us that are storytelling driven, we can make up stories, y'all.
Oh, absolutely.
Narratives about experiences, people, and then what you do is you tell yourself the story. I'm not saying something that ain't.
Oh, I made up a story about the lady at the tire place.
And then you believe it. So the thought then turns into that this feedback loop, but you begin to believe something that isn't even accurate. and you act out on it. Yeah, why y'all think racism is so hard to beat? You think laws and legislation is going to end that? MLK already said that.
He let us know.
I mean, at least it could help to suppress something, right? Kind of hold some people accountable. But at the heart of it, though, it's a mind shift for thousands of years, man. The idea of superiority and subsequently our inferiority has created feedback loops and state of beings believing things that aren't even true. And then we project those things spiritually.
Yeah.
So who am I for God to save someone like me? Or how can he not? Does he not see the good that I'm doing?
Or, and Pastor Nathaniel Drew preached about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm glad I'm better than that person.
At least I don't. ... The thief saying, well, at least I don't kill.
Right.
I didn't take a life. I took candy, but I didn't take a life. Yeah.
Right.
It is I think it's important for us to still though tie it back to, well, what do we do with all of this?
Yeah.
Like how do we fix this? Like how do I become aware? How do I become conscious? Use this experience right now.
Yeah.
It may not be considered technically a miracle moment, but it is a moment that is disrupting you right now to start thinking about what you are doing, the patterns that you have created, the routine that you're in. This right now is an opportunity when we're done. And some of us, maybe not even when we're done, like right now, as we're doing this, you're just like, okay, what do I need to shift? What have I been doing consistently? And there have been a lot of patterns for me that I've realized and been able to unpack being in this new work environment and realizing, because the work is the same, well, not the same, but the pattern is the same. So I'm starting to pick up certain things like, wow, so if I only did this and fix this and adjust this, or better yet, because that was me just always thinking about achievement and success. If I fixed this, then I wouldn't even need to worry about what other people thought, because they already hired me to do a job. They already see me greater than I saw myself.
Yeah.
Right. So right now is your disruptive moment. And the best way,
that's good.
We're gonna say it again at the end, but the best way to manage this, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do now? Acts chapter 2:38. Paul had a very similar experience where there was a disruption. And the people said to Peter, okay, we've been disrupted. What do we do? Turn, publicly commit, and receive what God has already got for you. Repent, be baptized, and the Spirit, or the gift of God, the gift of the Holy Spirit, will be given. But you can't do that unless you dialogue. You can't, y'all. So this whole what now moment, it should create, your God encounter should create a what now? What do I do now? Talk to God.
Yep.
Like a real talk, y'all.
A real conversation.
I know our Father in heaven, hallowed be. You ain't in the hallowed be. You haven't been hallowed in since.
You ain't been hallowed. Hallowed. And that conversation is simple conversation.
Yeah. Don't make it
negative narratives we write for it. It can be that simple, but you got to have a conversation. And sometimes the shift is, even as Chris pointed out, how we approach the conversation.
Right.
Am I coming to God with the idea that, man, he just waiting for me to mess up, waiting to catch me?
Yeah.
Or am I coming to God with the idea that maybe he wants what's best for me? I'll never really know unless I talk to him, right?
That's facts.